There's nothing quite like a good book. You know, the kind that sucks you in and then stays with you long after you've read it. For many of us, reading is a pleasure that we'd like to share with our kids. But even if reading isn't your favorite or your kid's favorite, time spent reading is an important aspect of any curriculum plan, because no matter how you or your kids feel about reading, the culture we live in demands that our children demonstrate competency with the written word. One way to gain that competency is to read daily, even the little ones that are just getting started with reading. That means we need to have books on hand at all times, and not just any books, but books that are age appropriate and reading level appropriate, and that our kids will find interesting. Let's not make things harder on ourselves and disrespect our kids by demanding that they enjoy what they consider to be utterly unenjoyable. So how do we go about putting together this list of books before the school year even begins, so that finding a book to read doesn't become a minor emergency every week when you're just trying to live your life? Well, I'm Leslie Maddox, an engineer turned homeschool mom, and I want to help you customize your homeschool. In the last Homeschool Plan Decoded video, we talked about how to finalize a custom curriculum plan for your students. Let's continue customizing your homeschool by looking at how to create book lists for your students. Just so you know, the Homeschool Plan Decoded Starter Kit contains numerous book-related worksheets to help you in your homeschool, from reading logs to progress charts. You can find a link to the starter kit below. Okay, first, let's start off with who needs a book list. What you cover in language arts will change a bit as your children grow. When it comes to the reading aspect of language arts, preschoolers and early elementary students are learning how to read and increasing reading fluency. As they get older, students read books with more complex language and extend the amount of time that they read each day. And they work more on reading comprehension and literary analysis. You may need a book list if the language arts curriculum you chose while creating your curriculum plan does not include readers or daily reading assignments. Let's go over some examples. Let's say you have a kindergartner, and your academic objectives for that kindergartner include learning to blend letter sounds and reading CVC words, as well as recognizing basic sight words. I worked on some of those objectives by using Hooked on Phonics to teach my kids to read. In the kindergarten level, they learned to blend sounds and how to read CVC words, and there was some attention given to sight words. Hooked on Phonics did come with readers that apply specific phonics skills after students have had a chance to practice them within individual words. But the way we used the curriculum, my kids weren't reading out of a Hooked on Phonics reader every day, and there wasn't enough attention given to sight words. I felt like I needed to add more reading into our day so that my kids could meet their academic objectives. So on the day that my kids weren't reading a Hooked on Phonics reader, I ended our phonics lesson by spending about 5 minutes helping my child read out of a book from our book list. This was more fun and casual reading, so I try to find books at or near the reading level that they would actually enjoy, and I supplied any words that they didn't know. But I found it to be the most effective way for my kids to learn to read sight words and high-frequency words. Here's another example. I'm currently using Lightning Literature for a portion of my second graders' language arts activities. It involves reading a new book at the beginning of each week. But how about the rest of the week? One of my academic objectives for my second grader is to develop his reading fluency by reading increasingly difficult books, and I feel like he needs more assigned reading to meet that objective. So I created a book list for us to work through, and a couple of days a week we sit with one of those books for 10 or 15 minutes. So take a look at your reading or language arts curriculum to see how reading is assigned. Will your kids be reading every day? If not, consider if you'd like to create a list for them to work through. You may also need to create a book list if you decide to DIY a reading curriculum for your kids in order to meet reading or literature-related academic objectives. What I mean by this is that instead of finding a reading or literature curriculum that will cover the entire year, you may decide to create your own list of books for them to read, and then possibly find a method or resource to use in order to meet their academic objectives. Okay, let me share more examples of ways that we've tackled reading objectives without a curriculum. For a couple of my kids, after they finished going through Hooked on Phonics, we spent a year just reading books from a list I curated. My focus was on increasing reading fluency and getting a lot of reading in, so we tackled each book and increasing reading level difficulty for the most part. Another reading-related academic objective was developing their reading comprehension so that they could remember and understand the major points of what they were reading. So I would have them narrate to me, which was basically them giving me a verbal summary of what they read in their assigned book that day. I also involved other resources. One of my kids really enjoyed lap books, so for a couple of years, I allowed him to choose from the literature lap books created by Erica at Confessions of a Homeschooler. I also found book-specific study worksheets on Teachers Pay Teachers. Currently, my 4th grader is using reading summary worksheets that I created for him to use, and my 7th grader is using Progeny Press study guides that work on vocabulary, reading comprehension, and literary analysis of specific titles. That's technically curriculum, but those study guides cover only one book each, taking about 8 or 10 weeks to complete. So I still had to create a short list of books for my son to read and then purchase the study guides to go along with them. Regardless of how I choose for my kids to study a book, it all begins with a book list that I curate for each of them. Do your language arts plans for your kids that are reading independently include reading and literature activities? If not, you may need to DIY a reading curriculum where you create a book list and find relevant resources to develop and increase your students' language arts skills. If your curriculum plan includes curricula that covers reading objectives with daily reading, you're probably good to go. But you could create a book list just to be ready for suggestions for your child if he or she is at a loss for something to read. And you could also create a book list with additional reading for other subjects like history and science. And while you're at it, think about read alouds, especially if you have younger students. Do you want to make reading aloud a regular part of your homeschool day or week? Be kind to your future self and make a list of books that you want to read aloud to your kids so that you actually do read aloud to them and aren't just left with good intentions. So now, let's talk about how to put together that list. The goal here is to have a handy list of books that you'll need to collect for your students. It will serve as a reference throughout the year, but also be your shopping list as you purchase curricula and visit homeschool conferences. So you want one list that's actually written down, not scattered lists or thoughts in your head. So always when I say, oh, I won't forget that, then I forget it. Know what I mean? The starter kit has a worksheet that you can use to track the books you need. You may choose to purchase books and readers all at once or soon before you need them. You may choose to borrow them from the library from a friend instead of purchasing them. Whatever you choose, this worksheet will help you to keep on track so that you have the books that you need when you need them. If you're not using the starter kit, you can create a note on your phone or a spreadsheet or grab a piece of notebook paper, just something to keep you on track. Start off by listing any books or resources that are required for the curricula you've chosen but not included with it. If you've chosen to purchase literature packs that are associated with your curriculum and you've included those on your curriculum plan worksheet or wherever you're documenting your curriculum plan, you don't need to include those books here. But if you're using a literature-heavy curriculum and have decided to purchase the books or readers separately, definitely write them down so that you don't forget. For example, I shared earlier that we're using Lightning Literature, where we read a different book every week, plus read alouds. There is an associated literature pack that I could have bought, but we already had some of the books, so I decided to purchase the ones I needed month by month. If you have similar thinking for whatever curricula you've chosen, write down both the titles and authors for the books that you'll need to source. If you're using the book list worksheet from the starter kit, don't fill in the date needed column. Wait until you do lesson planning to fill in that column. Next, add non-curriculum books that you'd like your kids to read. If you've been following along with the Homeschool Plan Decoded videos, you'll remember that I explained how to explore book lists in the How to Research Homeschool Curriculum book list video. Refer to the book list you found to compile a list of books for your child. To ensure that the books you choose are at the appropriate reading level, you can refer to Scholastic's Book Wizard or Lexile.com. On Scholastic's Book Wizard, enter the name of a book you're considering. If Scholastic has information about that particular title, you will hopefully see information in the product details that will guide you in deciding if the book will work for your child. Some of the information that you may find in the product details include grades, Lexile measure, and guided reading level. Scholastic also has a guided reading level chart that you may find helpful. If you don't find a book on Scholastic's website, try Lexile.com. Select Find a Book under Lexile Tools and enter your title to get the Lexile level. Once I determine that a book is at an appropriate interest and reading level for my child, I like to plug that information into a spreadsheet to make sorting a little bit easier. For younger students, I sort my list of books by reading level so that my child is reading increasingly difficult books throughout the school year. For older kids, I put our book list titles in the general order that we'll probably be reading them, but I sometimes allow my kids to choose what they'd like to read next. You can always make reading order decisions later when you're doing your lesson planning. For now, the important thing is that you finalize book list choices based on your kids' reading levels and include the chosen titles on your master book list. that list will be more precious than gold for you. If you've been following along with the Homeschool Plan Decoded method of planning and organizing your homeschool, you should now have 2 lists that will include homeschool materials that you'll need to purchase or source in some way. Your curriculum plan for each child, which should include all of the curriculum and related materials that you'll need to purchase, along with the lowest price you found and where you found that price. And the precious book list you just created with all of the books and readers that you expect to use during the coming school year and will need to borrow or purchase separate from your curriculum. Take these 2 lists with you when you go shopping at homeschool supply stores, used bookstores, or when you go to a homeschool conference. You never know, you may be able to find a deal. Or go ahead and make curriculum purchases from your curriculum plan list. Bring your plans closer to reality by actually ordering all the things and bringing them into your house. You'll be so excited to start seeing those boxes come in. For the books from the book list, you may be able to find them at the library. If you want the books for keeps, you can go ahead and purchase them or wait until about a month before you need them to spread out the cost. In the next Homeschool Plan Decoded video, we'll talk about how to create lesson plans for your new curriculum when it arrives. Remember that you can always access all of the videos that walk you through the steps of the Homeschool Plan Decoded method of planning and organizing your homeschool right now at the link below. And happy planning!